Welcome to the Caribbean Cricket Podcast, your one-stop shop for all things West Indies cricket. By the fans, for the fans.
Roach, and I listen to the Caribbean Cricket Podcast.
Indeed you are, people who listen to the Caribbean Cricket Podcast. Welcome to a special live Caribbean Cricket Podcast show. Welcome to all, wherever you're tuning in from. Get in the comments, let us know where you're watching from, where you're listening from, so on and so forth. We'll put you on the screen. I don't think we're going to bring you on the show live because, you know, if we make that mistake, neither one of us is going to bed tonight. So we have to be careful. We have to be careful about how we run this show tonight. My name is Machel and Santokie, here, one half the Caribbean Cricket Podcast. Welcome to all. And with me as ever, look, people, look at his screen. Clean. With a clean screen. Santokie, how you doing?
Yeah. I'm glad you said that, Mash, but watch how the Wi-Fi cuts out in about 30 seconds and then you're left hanging. But yeah, guys, thank you everyone for joining us. Mash has been putting in the work with the YouTube videos, under 19 Women's World Cup content. You've done a video about Nkrumah Bomber. You've taken us to 4,000 subscribers on YouTube. We're on the race to 5,000 now, Mash, isn't it?
Road to 5K. Like, share, comment, link below,
yeah.
all of that stuff, people. But Santokie, listen, let's get straight into it because the news has come out. And in fact, actually, I'm not even going to... In fact, no. Let me actually do the official press release first, and then we'll kind of do the questions and so on and so forth. And actually, people, before I do that, if you're in this video, like it, share it, subscribe to Caribbean Cricket Podcast. Thank you for helping us get to 4K. 5K now is the target. And if you aren't already, you can become a patron of the Caribbean Cricket Podcast for as little as $2, £2, £2, £2, €2, $2 Eastern Antiguan dollars, whatever it is. You can become a patron with as little as 2 of your currency. But let me read the official statement first, Santokie. And then we'll go from there. The Cricket West Indies men's selection panel today announced a 15-member squad for the upcoming 2-match test series in Zimbabwe, starting on the 4th of Feb. The selection panel has recalled experienced fast bowler Shannon Gabriel, as well as left-arm spinners Gudakesh Motie and Jomel Warrican. Gabriel has taken 161 wickets in 56 tests, placed him joint 12th in the West Indies all-time wicket-takers list, and most recently was the joint leading wicket-taker in the CG United Super 50 Cup for the TNT Red Force in November last year. Jayden Seales is unavailable for selection following a knee injury and subsequent surgery, whilst Anderson Phillip is also unavailable due to injury. Lead selector, the most honourable Dr. Desmond Haynes, said, "This is the start of the international calendar and we hope to start with a win. We appreciate it won't be an easy assignment in Zimbabwe. Like most other teams in world cricket, they play very well on their home soil on pitches that will support their style of play. We looked at the conditions we anticipate playing in and have included 2 left-arm spinners who did not go to Australia in Motie and Warrican. With our fast bowlers, Seales has done extremely well for us since he started back in 2021. But with him unavailable, we have decided that Gabriel would be best able to fill that role. Gabriel is an experienced bowler who has been at the international level for over 10 years and has knowledge of the conditions in Zimbabwe when we won there in 2017. There's more to it, but that's essentially the crux of the statement. Santokie, where do you want to start there? It's not as in fact, do you know what? Sorry, Santokie. Before I say where do you want to start, I didn't even read out the squad. Sorry, it's a full squad. Craig Brathwaite, Jermaine Blackwood, Nkrumah Bomber, Tay Shandapal, Roston Chase, Josh De Silva, Shannon Gabriel, Jason Holder, Alzari Joseph, Carl Mayers, Gudakesh Motie, Raymond Reefer, Kim R. Roach, Devon Thomas, Jomel Warrican. Where do you want to start with that, Santokie?
Well, I guess the first thing to say, Mash, is it's a very conservative squad. There's not been that many changes. The ones that have been made have been enforced with Gabriel coming in. I think we've said this on the podcast, West Indies, in terms of selection, we have tended to be on the cautious side rather than experiment. But you did think maybe with Andre Kohli at the helm now, maybe we might see some changes, some implementations. But generally, they've stuck with the tried and tested. I guess there's two ways you can look at it, Mash. Obviously, we got battered in Australia, but generally the test side has been pretty good, especially at home in 2022. So you could say essentially they're sticking with, a decent group of players. On the flip side, you can say, considering there's no World Test Championship points at stake here, it's the series against Zimbabwe. Perhaps this was the chance to experiment. There were rumors going around beforehand that the likes of, Jason Holder and Kim Roach weren't going to feature. So we thought, okay, maybe this is going to be used as an experimentation series, but they've gone with what they know, experienced players. And I guess the starting point is Shannon Gabriel. Now, we both said we'd expect Shannon Gabriel to get a test recall, namely because of Jaden Seals' injury. And now with Anderson Phillip out, it was only right he got called up. But Mash, I want to start off by firstly saying Jaden Seals is out, Anderson Phillip's out. Bringing in Shannon Gabriel, who's going to be 35, and he was, he's injury prone. He missed the Super 50 final with the injury as well. Do you think we've left ourselves threadbare? Is Shannon Gabriel enough to bring in? Should we have brought in an extra fast bowler on top of that, bearing in mind the context of Gabriel's injury history?
Well, boys, so as you were saying that, I was writing it down on a piece of paper. So our fast bowlers, and I used fast here loosely, Roach, Joseph, Gabriel. So that's the three frontline seamers. Then you've got Holder and Mayers as the kind of bowling all-rounders. Holder as medium fast, Mayers as a swing bowler. And I guess I should include Roston Chase as the spinning all-rounder, however loosely you want to determine that he is in that sense. Here's the thing that everyone should be worried about, and Fireball has just said it, Santokie. What happens if Gabriel gets injured?
Yeah, exactly.
Now, there is no... And bear in mind, if they're not going to go to Zimbabwe and then fly back to the Caribbean and then fly out to South Africa, this effectively is 4 tests. If Santokie, as far as I'm concerned, it's 6 games back to back. It's the warm-up game in Zim, then the 2 tests, then the warm-up game in South Africa, then the 2 tests. It's basically a back-to-back 6-game stretch. And don't get me wrong, when I did the video for the squad that I would select, I had Shannon Gabriel in my squad, but I had the insurance policy of another seamer just in case there happened to be a problem, right? So how are they going to? And I go back to, remember that 2020 tour we did in the pandemic to England, where we played the same bowling attack match after match after match. And by the third one, Gabriel had basically broken down and we looked tired, right? How are they planning to rotate Roach, Joseph, and Gabriel? There's no other seamer there. So what do you get? I'm coming from, Santokie. What's the plan? Or I think they might have left themselves a bowler light here, fast bowler light.
Yeah, I think they have left themselves a fast bowler light. And as you said, is in the context of it being South Africa straight afterwards, you'd imagine Gabriel's not going to play all 4 of those tests. So it'd be interesting to see how they rotate it. I mean, if Gabriel's fully fit, you'd obviously take him, you put him in the side. Especially on South African pitches, I think he can cause a lot of damage. But it is a high-risk strategy. And Mash, to counter that, we seem to have gone, we've taken 2 left-arm spinners. I don't think both of them will play necessarily unless Zimbabwe is a really turning pitch. So it's a weird one because we've gone light on fast pace bowling, but then covered ourselves with a lot of spin. So they've obviously gambled on the pitches being a certain way, which is a high-risk strategy. I just don't know why there isn't an insurance policy. I don't know if you know any more, Mash, but I'm assuming Minley is still carrying an injury from Australia, which is probably why he hasn't been picked.
Yeah, I would assume that about Minley. And actually, before I answer that question, 007 says Gabriel was not injured in Super 50, but he was because
he only bowled 4 overs.
In the final, he bowled 4 overs and then didn't
Yeah.
bowl for the rest of the final. And that's not to say that Gabriel's injured now. That wouldn't be the point. But there will naturally be many who will still say there's an injury cloud over Gabriel. I'm glad he's included because particularly if he's able to stay fit and we go to South Africa, he will definitely be needed on the spicier tracks in South Africa. But pivoting back to your point about the spinner, Santokie, and Colin has just said here, I want to hear the justification of Warrican. There's 2 different ways to go with the spinners argument, Santokie. First things first, I don't understand why there's 2 left-arm spinners in the squad. Like, if anything, there's an argument to say we've made the same mistake as we've made in Australia, but just in a different way. When we went to Australia, we took Roston Chase as the front-line spinner. Okay. We appear to have rectified that by taking Gudakesh Moti, who I think will be the first choice frontline spinner, right? We appear to have rectified that by taking Moti. Why have we taken Warrican as well? Is it that they've looked at the Zimbabwe lineup and said, right, Zimbabwe have got load of right-handers, so we're going to take some left-arm off-break bowlers? Like, what's the justification
Yeah.
here? And also, Santokie, if they're going to play 2 spinners, it means it's chase plus 1, right? But we just saw in Australia that chase isn't effective. So do you get what I'm trying to say? There's a lot of holes in this. I can't find a clear rationale to justify why you'd take Multi and Warrican and then also have Chase. If Chase plays Santokie, they must be moving him back into the top 6 to play as a batter, right? But I don't even know where to go with the arguments, because it doesn't. And in fact, Natalia's just made the point I guess I'm getting at. What's Chasing the squad as? I think that's my issue. If you're taking Multi and Warrican, what is Chase's role now in the squad? Is he going? He's just gone from being a number 8 frontline spinner in Australia to now going as what then? A frontline batter who bowls a bit of off spin. There's no. What's going on?
Like, you know, in football, when you got like the false 9 position, like the guy who just roams around the lineup. That's basically what Chase is at the moment. You don't know what he's playing. Is he come as a frontline batter, frontline spinner? So it's completely right, Mash. And I think it's weird. It's as if we're going to play in like Chennai in the subcontinent or something. The amount of spin we've packed in. And I think one thing we need to address is, obviously, I can understand whatever they've taken 2 slow left arm spinners, but why has Veerasamy Permaul not been called up, essentially? If you look at the last season stats, he took 19 wickets in 5 matches, economy 2.37. Moti took 17, exactly the same economy, 2.37. Warrican played 5 matches, 13 wickets, and his economy was a lot higher. So what is the basis on picking Warrican? Because he didn't take as many wickets. His economy was higher. So it's not easy, even if you're bringing him into the strict runs, which you don't really need to do in Test cricket anyway. And also, Moti played against Bangladesh, so you'd expect him, as you said, to be the first choice specialist spinner. Before that, Veerasamy Permaul played against England. So you would expect those 2 would be the incumbent spinners to come in. So it'd be interesting to see what exactly was the justification for Warrican coming in, unless there was a personal reason why Permaul was not selected for this tour.
And also, I would throw in there as well that the last time Warrican played, I think it was that home test match against Pakistan, where inexplicably in Sabina Park we batted. I think we bowled first with Warrican in the side. He took no wickets in the test match, and we haven't seen Warrican since then. You know, that was back in, when was that? Was that like August 2021? So what did Warrican do? Was it? Am I wrong?
He might have played in Sri Lanka. I'm not sure though. Let me check quickly.
Oh, he may have done.
He might have done. They might have gone 2 in Sri Lanka.
I thought Cornwall was the. I don't remember.
I know we've tried to erase this series from our memory, so this is why it was happened.
Are you talking about Sri Lanka away?
Last year. Yeah, we played Permaul. We played Permaul and Warrican together.
Ah, see, I'd forgotten that. But then that means. Okay, so hold on. Let me just double check. So
it was when Permaul got 8 wickets. Remember when he took 5 in the first and then 3 in the second?
Yeah, but then Permaul took 8 wickets.
Yeah.
Have you got Permaul's stats up there?
Let me say 1 second. Yeah,
so Warrican took no wickets in that first test match versus Pakistan, went to Sri Lanka, and took 9 wickets at 28. Permaul played the second test match, if I remember rightly, and took 8 wickets, right? In that second, am I right in saying that?
Yeah, 8 wickets, yeah.
Right, 8 wickets at what?
Let me see. I have to get the stats up 1 second. Yeah, and Warrican took 4 in that test.
Right, so Warrican took 9 at 28 in Sri Lanka, and Permaul took 8, I think, at a better average in the one test match he played. So what I guess I'm trying to say to you, Santokie, is Permaul then kept his place for the England series at home.
Yeah.
Admittedly didn't bowl that well. But my point then is this. How have we gone back to Warrican? What's Warrican doing going to Zimbabwe? And more importantly, there's a big issue here. Where's Rakeem Cornwall? It's the Santokie. It's a madness. It's a madness. How did we go from Warrican, no wickets versus Pakistan, 9 wickets in Sri Lanka? Permaul out-bowled him in Sri Lanka. Permaul then got picked as the lead spinner versus England. Permaul then gets dropped. Moti then gets picked as the lead spinner versus Bangladesh. And now we go to Zimbabwe, and it's Moti and Warrican. And in the same time as all of this is happening, Cornwall took the most wickets in the domestic championship.
Yeah.
Best economy. What on earth? How does that make any sense to anyone? So there's no justification for that. What? Why would you take 2 left-arm seamers when you could take Multi as a left-arm seamer and take Cornwall as the best off-spinner in the region? They've not said and looked at Chase and gone, yes, Chase showed us enough in Australia to mean that we're definitely taking him as our primary off-spinner again. And we know Cornwall can bat. So what's the justification? Do you get where I'm coming from, Santokie?
Well, I feel like Cornwall would become a broken record on this because there's obviously a reason beyond his cricketing performances why he's not chosen. It could be fitness reasons or something along those lines. So there's obviously a specific reason because if you're judging it on the domestic season, he was the leading wicket taker. So, and the fact we need a spinner, he might be right on, but we need a spinner in for the Zimbabwe tour. It's baffling why he hasn't been picked, Mash. But you do feel it is obviously something to do linked with sort of fitness. And it's interesting in ESPN there was an article today. I don't know if anyone watching saw the article. It's an interview of Cornwall talking about his size and fitness tests, and he doesn't do the yo-yo test for Cricket West Indies. He does a cardio test on the bike because of a knee injury. So even then, I think we just need some clarity on why Cornwall hasn't been picked. And I'm sure it's something that will be brought up with Desmond Haynes in the press conferences about this selection.
Yeah. In fact, actually, let me find that comment if I can find it. Yeah. So Chris, I think. Actually, this wasn't even the comment. This wasn't the comment I was looking for. Chris says every single squad selected has logic-defined selections, which is true though. It's true. But there's another point Chris made, which I think is here. It is. Will Desmond Haynes do a press conference, and can you answer people's questions? Yeah. So. Cricket West Indies haven't announced yet when or if the press conference is going to happen. But when it does happen, one of us will one or both of us or whatever will definitely be in that press conference. And I think, Santokie, the key questions that need to be asked, and if there's any media watching this particular live, you can steal our questions if you want. But the key questions that need to be asked, what was the justification for Warrican? What is Chase going to Zimbabwe as? Why is Cornwall not being picked? Where's the 4th seamer? Should somebody break down in Zimbabwe, given that South Africa is pretty much straight away afterwards? I think they're all valid questions, Santokie.
Yeah, I definitely think so, especially with the seamer, especially like we said, we've already talked about Gabriel. Roach is 34. There's no guarantee he'll be able to get through all 4 tests. So it is like we are treading on thin ice with our selections. And it'd be interesting to see kind of what they say. But Mash, we've talked about the bowling. Let's talk about the batting. So Shamar Brooks did not make the cut. He was the one batter omitted from the squad. Now, again, they haven't chosen cover for him, interestingly enough. There's no batting cover coming in. I know Brooks obviously only played it in Australia as cover for the injured Nkrumah Bomber. So Bonner will take his place back in the 11. But do you think this was time to reinforce the batting as well? It's bizarre that they've taken out Brooks but not replaced him with a batter. And you do feel it does feel us a bit light going into this series against Zimbabwe.
Well, it does. And again, if I reference the video that I did looking at the potential test squad selection for Zimbabwe, I said that I thought one of Brooks or Reefer would get dropped from the squad. I just assumed it was going to be Reefer. And the only reason I thought that was because I looked at the Barbados warm-up games that are going on at the moment for the 4-day championship, and Brooks isn't involved. So now my question is, where is Shamar Brooks? if he's not in the test squad, where is he? What cricket is he playing right now? And if there's anybody maybe in the live in the comments who's from Barbados and knows something, can you get in the comments and let us know? So where's Shamar Brooks? He's not warming up. He's not playing in any warm-up games. So that means he's not, unless the Barbados Pride have said to Shamar Brooks, you're going to get selected in the squad anyway. The trial games or the Legends games are for other players to try and stake their claim. So, because otherwise, where is he? What cricket is he playing? Reefer's in that UAE league, so he's playing some T20 stuff at the moment. So we know where he is, and we know that he's playing some cricket. I think, to answer your question, though, Santokie, about is the batting light, I think there's a wider question we probably need to ask ourselves more than just is the batting light. Have they missed an opportunity to experiment? And I mean, there's an easy answer to that, and we could just go with the easy answer saying yes. But I guess maybe I should change the question, Santokie. Should they have experimented, knowing that basically South Africa is straight away after the Zimbabwe series, and there's pretty much no break. Do you think they did the right thing in going conservative? And if you're dropping a Shamar Brooks, should they have drafted in a Brandon King? Should they have drafted in an Alec Athanase? Should they have drafted in a Casey Carty or whoever it may have been, just to have them in and around the squad, irrespective of whether we're going to play a test match or not? Was it the right thing to do? So they've effectively dropped Brooks, lost Seals, lost Phillip, and brought in 3 bowlers. So they haven't taken any new batter from the region in a test series that has nothing to do with the World Test Championship. Is that a missed opportunity, Santokie?
I think from their perspective, obviously, if you're a selector or part of the coaching staff, you're judged on results. So they've essentially taken a squad who they feel can get the win against Zimbabwe. If you look at our schedules, 2 tests against South Africa, after that 2 tests against India. Our only realistic chance of winning the test will be against Zimbabwe. So they've essentially thrown all their cards on that. But if you're looking at, Mash, the long-term development of our test side, we've mentioned it on the pod a few times. It's not a young squad. You've obviously got Brooks, who's been dropped, but he's 34. Bonnar's 34. Blackwood's 31. Holder's 31. So I do feel it was time to implement some younger faces, maybe not into the 11, but a Casey Carty or an Athanase, to be around the setup, prepare them to make the test squad at some point. So you just feel we are missing out on that sort of long-term view. And with Brandon King, as much as I would love to have seen him in this tour, it'd be interesting to see if his deal with the Abu Dhabi Knight Riders affected his availability, whether they did approach him and whether he already committed to the T20 series in UAE, or if there was no approach made. My gut feeling is there probably was no approach made to him, but it'd be interesting to see what Desmond Haynes does say about that. So I can completely understand it. If I'm looking from the perspective of a selector, you got to do what you got to do to get the win, but it just seems very short term. I mean, where you have to gamble. I think we've seen with Bazball in England, you have to gamble to take risks to be successful in Test cricket at the moment. And I just feel those new faces could have given us some impetus against South Africa and India, with whatever they may have added. And I just feel we've missed out on that. We've missed the opportunity by using the Zimbabwe series, not to wholesale experiment, not to bring in a completely new 11, but just to bring in a few new faces, get them ready for Test cricket, see what they can offer.
Yeah, and here's why what you're saying is so crucial, Santokie. Let's just say, argument's sake, so we play South Africa, and then we have a massive break until the Indians come for the 2 test matches in June, July, or whenever it is they come, right? Let's just say we have some injuries between South Africa and India. Then we're putting ourselves in the same situation with Tej Chanderpaul, where Tej had to debut Australia away. Now, obviously, some people say, well, that's the true test. You sink or swim. That's how we find out if the batters are any good. But I just feel that you have an opportunity here. And remember, when we say take these players on tour, Santokie, or play them in series, that doesn't mean they have to play in the tests. I mean, give them some warm-up game experience.
Yeah.
It's a missed opportunity to not play. I'll just pick Alec Athanase as an example, in a warm-up game in Zimbabwe or in a warm-up game in South Africa. You know you're not going to play him in the test, but he gets crucial experience so that if it should come in the next year and a half that he suddenly transitioned into the West Indies test side, it's not just coming out of the blue. So the only kind of, I guess, disclaimer point I'd make to that is we have been told there's going to be some A-team cricket this year. So if Cricket West Indies have already kind of identified, right, these are the 15 players we're taking for that West Indies A tour, wherever it's supposed to be, that's why we don't need to take them to Zimbabwe, then I'm willing to accept it. But we have to just wait and see. And actually, I should just tell everyone who's in the live right now, we are recording an episode with Johnny Grave on, I think it's Friday. So we will be like looking at the year ahead for West Indies. So any questions you've got that you want us to possibly answer Johnny Grave, do at us at Carib Cricket, and we'll kind of put those questions to Johnny as well.
Let me ask you a question, Mash.
Yeah.
So we talked about Bazball and, Brendan McCullum. He's kind of an innovative mind. Do you think, I know it's early, well, Roland Butcher's just been appointed. Do you think we just need someone a bit more forward thinking and sort of part of a younger generation just to provide that impetus in terms of experimenting? Desmond Haynes seems to be very conservative. I'd imagine Roland Butcher's going to be similar to that. Do you just feel like our selection panel, the criteria of our selection panel means we're always going to be conservative and we're never really going to take risks unless we bring in someone who's just, like a Darren Sammy or someone who's been part of the kind of modern generation to kind of bring that impetus, because Test cricket is very conservative by nature, but it takes someone like a Brendan McCullum to kind of shake things up. Do you just feel West Indies will need that before we ever kind of move on to experimenting and bringing in players who you wouldn't necessarily say are typically Test players?
Listen, when my plan is that when Desmond Haynes stands down as selector, I'm running for selector, Santokie. I'm actually.
Listen, I'd vote for you, man.
I'm not even joking. Everyone in the live, you're hearing this for the first time. I'm gonna, before the end of 2024, I'm gonna be a West Indies selector. I'm telling you, Santokie, I'm gonna put my application in. Listen, my credentials are out there. I'm just gonna send them pure Caribbean Cricket Podcast episodes and just say, look at the credentials. Santokie and I were arguing for Shandapur long before your selectors even realised that it should be in the Test squad. Because, and the thing is, realistically, I'm actually not joking. I am actually going to apply to be a selector for West Indies cricket team, because I'd be comfortable justifying my opinions. No one could ever come to me and say, how does that make sense? Because I'd stand in the press conference and cuss people out and explain clearly how it makes sense, right? Yeah. But in a serious note, to answer your question, Santokie, on a more serious note, I do agree with your point that we are still stuck in the Caribbean in a kind of traditional mindset that only the legends of the game truly understand about cricket.
Yeah.
And that's not a cuss on the legends. I don't want anyone to take that the wrong way. I'm not saying they've got nothing to offer the game. They have. But cricket's changing. And look at the latest article that came out today. Gordon Greenidge saying, boy, I don't even watch cricket no more. That's kind of the mentality we're stuck in. But all the while, people will look at an article from Gordon Greenidge going, Gordon Greenidge don't even watch cricket no more. And I guarantee the majority of the Caribbean were nodding their head going, yeah, I understand. I understand, right? But we're not moving forward with the times. We're getting left behind. And younger age doesn't necessarily fix that, but forward-thinking ideas do. Yeah. If you can find me a legend who's got forward-thinking ideas, by all means, let them do their thing. I'm just not convinced that they're there yet.
Yeah, it's strange considering how innovative we have been with T20 cricket. With Test cricket, there just seems to be this set mentality that there's a way you can play and you have to be very conservative in the region. But I just feel we need someone to sort of break down the barriers and kind of shake things up, because as you said, I feel like we've missed the opportunity with Brandon King. I don't think we'll see him play Test cricket this year. He'll be 29 years old. So at that point, you're wondering if he gets more franchise deals, is he going to bother play Test cricket? We've already missed out on Nicholas Pooran, Evan Lewis. So we're missing out on top quality players who, might not necessarily have adapted to Test cricket, but they've never been given the opportunity to, because of the conservative and kind of structures we have in place in regards to selection. So I think that is a shame, and I do think short term, at least for the next 2-3 years, we probably won't have anyone in the selection panel, Mash, unless you manage to pull off the win in 2024. That's our only hope at the moment, because it just feels, with Roland Butcher just being appointed, I don't see much changing. And the selection for the Zimbabwe series, whilst it has just come, I just feel that will reflect the conservatism of the next 18 months in terms of our Test selection.
The only thing that might change that is who we get as head coach. For all we know, Santokie, when we get because we're just talking about Test cricket. Remember, when we go to South Africa, we got an entire white balls series to look forward to in terms of ODIs and T20s, and then obviously the World Cup qualifiers. So for all we know, we could be getting a forward-thinking ODI or Test coach who totally switches up the game. But then they're going to butt heads against Desmond Haynes and Roland Butcher, because ultimately, even if that coach is on the selection panel, you still have to try and convince the other two that, yeah, we should go with this player or that player, and so on and so forth. Let me ask you this question, Santokie, because we missed this out from earlier. If you were Rakeem Cornwall, would you just give up on West Indies cricket now and just get the big bag wherever you can get it? Because I'm starting to wonder if we're basically saying to Rakeem, you know what? You ain't ever playing Test cricket again. I just wonder what message we're sending. Because I guess what I'm saying to Santokie is, so Rakeem's going to play in the first class season that's starting next month. Rakeem will end up as the top wicket taker in the first class season again. That I'd bet probably I'd bet 90% of all the money I have that Raheem Cornwall's going to be number 1 or number 2 in terms of top wicket takers for the West Indies in the first-class season, if he plays all the games. We ain't picking him, though. So what's Raheem supposed to do now, Santokie? Should he just say to himself, let me just go get some T20 money because, I ain't getting the peas?
Yeah. I think Raheem Cornwall's kind of falling into the trap. Ironically, he's played the same amount of tests as Pamal, 9 tests. So I think he's someone who, and Nikita Miller, someone who kind of will see him dominate the regional, but never get that prolonged call up for the test side. Yeah, everyone hit the like button as well if you're watching this, man. Stay tuned, everyone. But I feel like, he's kind of in that mode of domestic players who were never really trusted with test credentials. But the difference with Raheem Cornwall, as opposed to a Pamal and Nikita Miller, we've seen it in the minor league cricket in USA. He's destructive with the bat. We've even seen it in CPL. So he's got that valuable skill set, which can translate to T20 kind of franchise deal. So I think, he's approaching 30. I think he's 30 years old next month. He'll be aware that, he's not going to get his opportunity anytime soon to break into the test side. So I do think there will be inevitable deals. Once one big deal comes for Raheem Cornwall, because of his unique attributes of being a big hitter and being able to spin bowl, that all-round capabilities, I think if he does well in one franchise league, it'll be a domino effect and we'll see him become a franchise player. And, that's understandable, Mash, because at the end of the day, you've got a set amount of period to make your money. There's been no signs, at least from a fan perspective, from our perspective, there's been no assurances to Raheem Cornwall that there even is a pathway back into the test side. So if I was him, I would just commit to the white ball game.
Boy. And so Joel making that point from earlier that you were talking. I haven't read the article yet. So actually, Santokie, for those people who may have, because there's now over 100 of you in the live, thank you everyone for coming through. That 100 of you, I hope there's one. I can't see the likes on our screen, so I hope there's 106 likes, people. But Santokie, I haven't read the article yet. Because I saw Azam Khan's face on the front of it. So is it about Azam Khan and they just happened to mention Raheem Cornwall? And is it making the point that Raheem can't meet the fitness standards? Like what was it actually trying to say about
so it's like it gives equal time. So Azam Khan's the headline. I'd imagine, obviously, being from Pakistan, that probably gets more views and clicks. So Azam Khan's the headline, but it does spend a lot of time talking to Raheem Cornwall. And it kind of gives a balanced argument that, Raheem Cornwall, he can do well in the slips. He's made it to test level, but at the same time, kind of experts do say if you're carrying excess body weight, it's going to disadvantage you. And Raheem Cornwall's got problems with his knee. So it is saying the ultimate point of the argument is you shouldn't judge anyone based on their body image in sports, but it is also saying that it does put you at a disadvantage at the elite level. But I feel like Jimbo, he's been given opportunity for test cricket. So it is baffling. If he'd never been called up for test cricket, you could say, all right, they're seeing his kind of size and his body weight as a hurdle. But the fact they gave him that call and then they've sort of reined it back and not given him another opportunity, despite him doing the stats, is what's led to all the confusion. And I just feel, particularly in light of how little tests were playing anyway, I just feel logically it's only right that Raheem Cornwall probably does move towards being a franchise exclusive player.
So let's try and wrap the show then with, I guess, because we've looked at the spinners, We've looked at the seamers, we've looked at the Raheem Cornwall issue, we've looked at the Brandon King issue, or the lack of new names in the squad. Would you say, Santokie, and it's interesting because I must say, actually, we should state that I thought that when the squad was going to be released, that they'd say this is the test squad for Zimbabwe and South Africa, but they've actually explicitly said this is the squad for Zimbabwe, which makes me wonder, is there going to be changes for South Africa, or is it that they just don't want to commit yet to this being the squad for South Africa? Whatever that might be. But here's my point, Santokie. Are there any players in the test squad right now who you think, if they don't play well versus Zimbabwe, their position is at risk by the time the new coach comes in and we play India in the summer? Is there anyone who you're thinking, you could hold a drop by the summertime?
It's a tough one, I think there could be a lot of question marks over well, it'd be controversial, but Jason Holder, if Jason Holder's form isn't good across these 4 matches, you could say there'd be question marks from there. I think there'll definitely be question marks over Jermaine Blackwood. If Jermaine Blackwood doesn't score in his 4 tests, I think him and Holder, I think they might give benefit to because of his kind of legacy as a world-class all-rounder in the past few years. I think the biggest drop could be for Jermaine Blackwood if he doesn't perform well. Obviously, he's done poorly against Australia. He's had average past year. So I think Jermaine Blackwood is probably most at risk. I think realistically, Craig Brathwaite and Tagenarine Chanderpaul, they're safe in their positions for now. So I think it's just that kind of batting kind of holder, Jermaine Blackwood. And Kuna Bomber, obviously we know how good he can be, but if he doesn't get the scores, there'll be a lot of pressure on him as well. And it sort of depends. I think obviously we're seeing this essentially will be an audition for the new coach to kind of see who's going to make his side in the long term. So it will be interesting to see a lot. There will be pressure. But for me, if I had to identify one player who was most at risk, it would be Jermaine Blackwood.
Yeah, I agree with you. I had Blackwood written down. I think Blackwood is due a score, and a significant score at that. Either he's got to hit some like a number of 70s and above, or he's got to get a century. I often say though that when Jermaine's most at risk of being dropped is when he tends to then get a score. He's kind of like that guy who reaches the time extension just as there's 3 seconds to go or something like that. So wouldn't go on, sorry.
Is that a Jamaican quality? Because John Campbell was an expert in that as well,
Put it this way, with Andre Coley now the head coach, the former coach of the Scorpions, I'm expecting Blackwood to find some kind of score at some point. But I've got one last thing, and obviously those in the comments as well, you can jump in. I think it might have been 00. I can't remember who sent this. May well have been 007. But here's a very good point here, Santokie. I'm just writing it down. So earlier on, I wrote down the most likely team to play in the first test. Obviously, it's a while away, right? And a lot depends on pitches as well. But I wrote down the most likely team to play in the first test versus Zimbabwe. And bear with me, because there's basically one argument I'm making to you. I believe that Carl Mayers, Roston Chase, and Jason Holder are fighting for 2 positions, right? Now, obviously, the chances of us dropping Jason are slim to none. So maybe it's Mayers and Chase fighting for 1 position. I just want to know who you would go for. Here's my side right now without knowing nothing about pitch conditions. Craig, Tage, Nkrumah Bonner at 3. Question mark at 4 because it depends who you pick. But for now, let's just say Jermaine Blackwood. Hold on. Let's just say for now, Mayers at 5, Holder at 6, De Silva at 7, Joseph at 8, Multi at 9, Roach at 10, Gabriel at 11. Now, hear me out. I'm not saying that's the side. I'm just picking a side. Multi, for me, if you're taking him, definitely plays because he is your frontline spinner. He plays above Warrican in my mind. So if we are agreed, you and me, that Multi definitely 100% plays, that only leaves 1 space left in the side because Holder will definitely play because it's Jason Holder. This is, of course, assuming everyone's fit. So who then plays in your sides, Santokie? Is it Roston Chase, who then goes back into the top 6 and he offers you the second spin option? Or is it Carl Mayers because he offers the swing option? What would you do, Santokie? Or do you think I've got it wrong and somebody else isn't playing?
Listen, where's Devon Thomas, man? We might need his
See, exactly. Listen, I haven't even mentioned like a Reefer or Thomas or anything like that.
Yeah, I think if it was between the 2, you know what? I got a sneaky feeling it'll be Chase, just because I think if you're going to pick 2 spinners in the squad, you obviously think there's something for spin. But if you don't want to commit to having 2 full-time spinners, Moti and Warrican, Chase is the perfect option because he provides that second spinner option. So I think it will be Chase between Chase and Mayers. Right,
and that's what I've got down. I think basically the same rationale that you used. If you've gone all to the whole bother of taking 2 left-arm spinners, you must be assuming the pitchers are going to spin in Zimbabwe's. And Chase gives you a get-out clause. He gives you a get-out clause of playing a second spinner. The only way I see Carl Mayers get a game is if A, they're resting Holder for South Africa, or B, they wake up on the morning of the Zimbabwe test and they look at conditions and they're like, boy, swing bowling's going to be the one today. Then you have to play Carl Mayers.
Yeah,
but that's the only way I see him.
But then if it is a case of swing bowling's doing a madness on in the first test, then surely that's it will reflect badly on a poor selection policy that you picked two left-arm spinners. So it's all confusing, Mash. As I think Chris said, there's just always confusion around selection whenever we have a tour. There just seems to be like no distinct logic to it. And I think this has just been another example. So it'd be interesting to see where they go. But I do think between Chase and Mayers, it will be Chase. And then when they go South Africa, I mean, we've seen what Mayers has been doing in the South African T20 League. They'll obviously probably lean more towards Mayers.
For real. Listen, people, I said Santokie before we press record. Let's try wrap this one up in half an hour. My time says it's 40 minutes, so we've done quite well there. At the time of us still talking, there's 123 of you in the live. So thank you very much for all of you, 125. Thank you very much for jumping in. Obviously, if you've only come through halfway when this is stopped recording, go back and play the first 20 minutes or so on and so forth. On your way out, people, we'd really appreciate if you press like. We'd really appreciate it if you share the video on your various different channels. And most importantly of all, subscribe to the Caribbean Cricket Podcast. We've got lots more content coming in the near future. Like I say, we have been led to believe that the report on the T20 World Cup debacle is due out this week. We've been told that it's coming this week. We have an interview lined up with Johnny Grave on Friday. We've got some content coming with the under-19 team that's out in South Africa at the moment. And I don't want to... We're going to be speaking to some of the players who are in the test squad for Zimbabwe. We won't give you any names just yet, but we're lining something up for next week with regards to one of the players in the test squad. So look out for that as well, people. But thanks as always for joining us on a live show. And Santokie, I'll give you the final words.
Yeah, thanks to everyone joining in. It's always good to get the discussion going in the region. You know, a lot of different opinions about selection, which is always good to hear from everyone joining into the chat. But lastly, I guess, Mash, you just mentioned it there briefly. Under-19s, big up the under-19s, got the win against Ireland, Indonesia. Their last game is coming up in 2 days against New Zealand. So all the best to them in their World Cup campaign. And as we said at the top of the show, guys, it's the road to 5K. We're trying to get 5,000 subscribers. So, you know, share our YouTube page with anyone, friends, family, anyone who's got a passing interest in West Indies cricket, and let's get it to 5,000 views. And also, finally, if you know anyone, you know, we asked last time if there's anyone, any companies who might be interested in sponsoring us, you know, just send us a message and we'll reach out to them in our long, prolonged search for the sponsor, man. Yeah,
free up the money. Let us free it up. Free up the money. The person who teeth Usain Bolt's money, come sponsor us, and so we can give us some of the 10 million that you teethed of Usain, so we can have some sponsorship. But people, thank you for joining us on another live show, and we'll be back with some content soon. Thank you and good night. We rule the cricket world. Now the rule. Welcome to the Caribbean Cricket Podcast, your one-stop shop for all things West Indies cricket. By the fans, for the fans.